A letter of instruction sends a note out to the person that you are trusting to be your personal representative, your executor of your estate, and says, first, I have designated you, oh, by the way, and here's information you need to know. Here's phone numbers, here's points of contact, this is what you have to know about the kids, the dog, the asthma medication, the allergies, where the spare key is. Because folks, a lot of our relatives are in different states, aren't they? And if they have to fly in, they're not going to know this. And it's very helpful to give them this information in a piece of paper that once they get the phone call with bad news, they can start making other phone calls. So what I'm going to talk about today is my leadership lessons from the dog series. And there's 3 basic principles. The first is to provide treats or rewards when people do something well. The second is don't reward bad behavior. And the third is to do it consistently. Here's the challenge with good behavior, and my puppy taught me this. If I want my puppy to sit, I cheerfully hold a treat in front of her nose, kind of close to the ground. Her little face goes up, the rest of her goes down. She gets a treat. I say the word sit, everybody's happy. My dog thought this was the easiest thing possible. This is all I got to do, Mom? This is great. You're the bomb. But in the workplace, it's a little bit more challenging, isn't it? It's difficult to reward good behavior in the workplace. Why is that? Well, it's easy to forget to thank people who are doing things well. And you have this all in a handout, by the way, that's on your seat, just in case, okay? And right now, especially when we're experiencing a great deal of anxiety and fear and panic, rewarding good behavior is important because it tells people they're doing the right thing at the right time. Now, rewarding good behavior means that you've got to make sure that people understand very clearly what the behavior is. And this doesn't happen all the time, does it? So how are some ways you could reward not just people at work, but people at home? Because let's say I want something done at my house. And let's say just for instance, that my personal thing, and it's just a personal thing, does anybody share my dislike of taking out the trash? I just don't like doing it. I'm not incapable of doing it. I'm perfectly able of doing this, but I just don't want to. So when my spouse person takes out the trash, if I say, sweetheart, I just want to tell you, thank you so much for taking out the trash. Because you know I don't like doing it, and every single time you do it, I know that what you're doing is saying, baby, I love you. And I just want you to know I don't thank you every time, but thank you. So what do you think happens the next day? He takes out the trash. This works great. A few moments on employee reward programs. For an employee reward program to do really well, it has to meet 3 criteria. And the first one is that it has to reward the employee in a way they find meaningful. The second is it has to be for a measurable action, a specific activity. And the third, and this, folks, I think, is where a lot of places screw up. It can't come at the expense of others. How many of you have ever seen an employee rewards program? And let's say Meredith gets Employee of the Month every single month. I mean, she's fantastic and everything, but the boss just thinks she is the bomb. She is the greatest thing ever. And she facilitates that by flattering the boss a little bit. So what do the rest of us think of Meredith? Fine. Employee of the Month, again, it's the 3rd month in a row, and it's March. Employee of the Year, who gets the bonus? Meredith. So what happens to our morale? It goes down. Yes, ma'am, it does. And oh, by the way, do we want to help Meredith when she needs help on a project? No, we kind of don't. We're kind of waiting for her to take that fall, aren't we? We are. And every Friday before I went home to a stiff drink, I would sit at my desk and I would write thank you notes, 1 a week, because I couldn't really muster any more. So one Friday I sat down to this and wrote a note to this petty officer. Dear Petty Officer Lawrence, I just want to let you know that I understand the last few months have been very difficult for you and that change is hard, and I have seen your effort and I really appreciate your effort. Thank you very much. Respectfully, Commander Kelly. And I didn't make a big deal of the notes. They would just appear on people's desks. Monday morning, he shows up and he walks into my office. a little indignantly. And he holds up the note and he says, "Is this a joke?" And I looked at him and I smiled and I said, "No." I said, "I really appreciate it." I said, "Look, change is hard and I really appreciate your effort and I thank you so much." I said, I really do mean it. I said, "And it's not your fault that you inherited a broken system and we've really made some progress and I thank you so much." And he looked at me in absolute shock, turned around and walked out. And I thought, oh, well, that went far. And a few weeks later, I saw the note and it was still on his desk. Well, 2 years later, the base had closed. I was in another job. He was in another job. And I walked by his desk, and guess what was sitting on his desk? That note. And I felt extremely humbled by this. Because to me, it was just my way of trying to reward people for good behavior and let them know that I understood the effort, and it meant something more to him. So it has to be meaningful to the employee. Lesson number 2 is don't reward the bad behavior. But frequently at work, now think of that person at work who just seems to get away with things. They're not the team player. They show up kind of when they want to. If there's anybody who's going to be relied on to do something, it's never them. And guess what? They outrank you in the organization. I love the mumbles there, yes. And what happens if they're the people who may not be above you but are actually below you? Do we correct the bad behavior? Some people do, but frequently at work, what happens to bad behavior? Do we correct it or does it get ignored? Gets ignored, absolutely. And why do you think, ladies and gentlemen, we are so slow as managers and leaders in today's society to correct bad behavior? Fear of confrontation. We do not want to fight at work. I had a friend who got a Bullmastiff puppy. And Bullmastiffs, well, they grow to be about 180 pounds. Yeah. And the problem with a Bullmastiff is they're wonderful dogs, but guess what? It's not like a Chihuahua. Where are my small dog owners? Yeah. If you got a little dog and they're doing something that you don't want them to do, you can pretty much just pick them up and correct the behavior. A Bullmastiff, not so much. Not so much. And really, you want your dog trained well. Why? It's safer. It's safer for your kids. It's safer for your friends. You can take the dog anywhere. The same with your employees. You ever have that employee that you've got a big, high-profile client and you just don't want to send them? That's like an untrained dog. You can't take them out in public, and certainly not to restaurants. I grew up with Dobermans, and here's the thing with Dobermans, you have to train them. Because a bad consequence with a dog like a Rottie and Pit Bull, people are afraid of them. And I'm here to tell you, I am more afraid of a Chihuahua. And do you know why? And where are my Chihuahua people? One person, yeah, here's the problem with a Chihuahua, and I'm not saying you. But when the dog lives most of its life in your purse, and every time it gets scared and shakes, which in a Chihuahua's life is like all the time, somebody picks it up and goes, "That's all right, little thing." Even when it bares its teeth and makes growling noises. That's not okay behavior. I am more afraid of a Chihuahua because it has been reinforced with bad behavior way more than my Dobermans, the Pit Bull, the Rottweiler ever were. Bad behavior should not be condoned. I was back on the East Coast. I was in Maryland, and I was at the post office. And I was number 2 in line at the post office. There were about 7 people behind me, and I was just mailing a package. Not that it matters. And I'm starting to talk really fast because, it's the post office. And everybody else wasn't moving fast. And this woman comes right up to the line, ahead of the person ahead of me, and she steps right up there. And I looked around. I did not see Her Majesty's entourage. And so I leaned forward and with my best smile, and I said, "The back of the line is over there," like she didn't know. And she said, "Oh, I just have a few things." I said, "Oh, the rest of us just have a few things too. The back of the line is over there." And she said, "Oh, I never wait." And I said, "This is your lucky day." And I took a step closer. The back of the line is over there. Now, if this woman said, I have a baby in the car, I've got an emergency, my mother's in the hospital, I would have taken her package it and mailed it myself. But the postal people are up there going, because apparently this woman did this all the time. And nobody stopped her. Why? We're afraid of conflict. And tacitly, by condoning it, we reward the bad behavior. Keep in mind at work, correcting people is not criticizing. You are helping to make people a better employee, a better leader, and a better manager by letting them know what behavior is desirable. If you don't correct your Doberman or your Pit Bull or your Rottweiler, they will never know what behavior is expected. And then, is it their fault when they misbehave? It's not, it's yours. So if you have a toxic employee and you haven't taken steps to correct it, this is not necessarily their fault. They may not know. They may know, but they may not know. You need to take steps to correct it.